Welcome to The Record Show, your virtual spin around the vinyl industry. Brought to you by Radio Wasteland Records. Yes, Midland has a record store. Here's your host, Jim Gleason.
Greetings from the Wasteland and welcome to another edition of The Record Show. We've got an action-packed one headed your way today. New releases continue to spring forth. We'll check in with Ken Norton from Ingram Entertainment to get all caught up. Heather will be here with a closer look at the new Chris Cornell cover album, and we'll check out some rare and highly collectible Michigan rock and roll vinyl. But first, I recently had a chance to talk with a very talented and multifaceted artist about his work and legacy. College friends Jem Targal and Drew Abbott, along with Jim Craig, formed the thirdpower in the late 1960s. Together, they released one album, Believe, in 1970, before going their separate ways. Drew Abbott went on to a long career as lead guitarist for Bob Seger's Silver Bullet Band, and Jem released one solo album before switching gears and going into the field of automotive engineering design. In a textbook case of one thing led to another, Targal's design work led him to more creative artwork, which then led to the creation of a cartoon character called Jungle Birdy, which then led to the publishing of a children's coloring book, which led to, well, we'll let Jem tell you the rest. We'd like to welcome a very special guest. This is a gentleman who was at the forefront of the Michigan rock and roll movement in the late 60s and early 70s. Ladies and gentlemen, Jem Targal from the thirdpower. Jem, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, man, for joining us here.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
You know what? You guys in the thirdpower, a power trio from Michigan in the late 60s and early 70s, it had to be just a phenomenal experience. Can you tell me a little bit about how this group got started and how you guys got some traction and, just what it was like at that era with all of these other great bands popping up out of Michigan?
Best time of our lives. I got to say, my life, and the guys feel the same way. Went to OCC, and I ended up hooking up with Drew and in the speed reading class. And then we started drawing on the chalkboard and talking and everything. Next thing we know, after he found out about my violin experience, he said, wow, I bet you'd be really good on bass. So that's how the bass guitar happened. And wonderful. It was just a wonderful moment. That whole meeting was just great. So I had done a little bit of rock and roll before, but playing the acoustic and everything. But this changed my whole life, really. Drew, thank you.
It had to be kind of a great time. I mean, you guys were up there with a lot of these other bands that were just popping at that era. The Stooges, early Seeger stuff, the Amboy Dukes, the MC5 especially, folks like SRC as well as Savage Grace, the Frost from up a little bit further north as well.
Amazing.
What do you attribute? I mean, in the Detroit area and the surrounding area, what was it about the Michigan sound that made all of these groups just take off like they were in that time?
Oh, it was so energized. MC5, when they hit the stage, you knew something special was going to happen. And all the bands, Iggy, look at what he was doing. It was just amazing. And everybody else stepped up on a really high level. So Detroit had its own signature, and like how California had its sound and vibe, Detroit and the Grande Ballroom, of course, started this whole thing, because after groups from national groups came in and started seeing some of the local bands.
Now, you guys also played at the legendary Goose Lake Festival in 1970, correct?
Goose Lake, yeah. Goose Lake.
And that had to be a real trip as well.
Oh, can you imagine Woodstock right here in Michigan? Another amazing moment. We ended up playing twice, actually. I think it was Alice Cooper. All their equipment didn't end up at the airport, and they couldn't get into the concert. So their slot was open. So they asked us to play Sunday afternoon, and we had played Saturday night right after the Stooges. And so we got to play at night during the day. Wow. Thanks, Alice.
Hey, okay, so now the Third Power, as we mentioned, a power trio from Michigan. You guys released one album, and that was in 1970, and the album was called Believe. What was it like for you to be writing that album in that era and to have that backing up and touring around with it?
Oh, it was fun being at a party, and all of a sudden they played Feel So Lonely at the party. You could feel the whole energy from the crowd that, our tune was on the radio. Dan Carlisle actually got us started with the whole thing with our 45 Snow and WUI. Danny Carlisle was the first and wanted to play it on WABX. So a little side note there, we were out driving in our car one day and listening to WABX. All of a sudden, Snow came on. Da-da, 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 da-da. And we were in our manager's Riviera, and we were so excited that it was playing on the radio. We almost got hit by an ambulance.
Oh, no. So the Third Power put out the one album, and then the band kind of went their separate ways. And what happened in that part of it that made you guys decide that that was it? We did the one good thing, and we're going to move on now.
We're kind of getting on each other. Drew was overbearing, and I was too standoffish. And Jim Craig, bless him, was just totally in the middle between everything that was always going on. But we did get back together again after. Right around that time, I feel that I started writing some of my best material, actually. I wrote this tune called The Cartoon that's on that bonus CD from Late in the Attic. And a bunch of great tunes started falling out after that, too. And I always wish we could have been together for another year, because I think we would have took the next step up, because we were that close for the writing to really mature like it did too.
Now, Believe, it had its one pressing from there's a couple different versions in different pressing plants out there from 1970. But there was a reissue from 2016, correct? It was a Record Store Day release from Light in the Attic Records.
This is the original one.
That's the original one. Yep.
Sure.
That had to be. Oh, well, here, hold on. If we're doing that, there's the other original.
Jim. Yeah, cool.
What was that like then to have the Record Store Day folks contact you and say, you know what, we would like to bring this up for a special release?
A miracle. It was a miracle. I stunned. The fact that almost 50 years later they wanted to still put our music out was so special. And then they got permission to go into the Vanguard vaults, and then that's where they found some of the other tunes we had recorded when we recorded Believe. And they let them remix them right off the masters, and those are some of the cuts that are on the bonus CD.
Now, after Third Power went their separate ways, you did do some solo work. You had a solo album that popped out, correct? Tell me a little about what led to that.
Oh, good. Thanks for asking, because that was kind of a sad period for me, because I was still playing a lot of music, piano stuff and a lot of bass stuff. I was writing all these awesome tunes, and but I didn't have anywhere to put them, to go out and play. I do a few little things once in a while, step in at a venue somewhere and just go up and play a couple tunes or something. But I didn't have any real outlet for all these new tunes. So I had this little 4-track, a Bogan 6-channel mixer with some reverb on it. I just kept recording these tunes, and one after another. And I wish I could have recorded them better, but the fact that I did make these crazy arrangements that I did, but the tunes are really good.
Now, your bio says artist and engineer. So this was really the second chapter then, correct? You went into engineering. What was that like to move from one field to the other? And did they kind of combine with each other to help you?
Oh, it was a hallelujah moment. I have to say, I was working for Tom Sawyer, a paint company. That's when I was doing the Lucky Guy album too, at the same time frame. Because I had drafting skills. I had that all through high school and everything. And one of my friends that I ended up doing a lot of singing with too, Sal Miro, introduced me to modern engineering. And I took some of my drawings, and I still had some, so they could see my drawings, and I had some experience. So says, yeah, why don't you come aboard? So I came in as a designer. And so the first 3 weeks, I was learning the compasses, trying to get used to everything, the scale and drawing on the Mylars and everything. And next thing I know, they were hanging my drawings up on the wall and telling everybody this is what they want them to look like.
Wow.
So that kind of started my whole engineering career, as it turned out. It's almost 30 years. And worked mostly on front ends, a lot of GMC stuff and lights and bumpers. And because I was doing all of this, engineering drawing and stuff, it actually sharpened all of my skills. So I started doing these drawings with the Jungle Birdy, using the compasses and the ink pens, the flow pens. And then I said, if I do 10 more of these, I'll put a coloring book together. So we went ahead and did some mock coloring books. I never really quite got there till I think it was 95. And we did a show at Barnes & Noble with our first actual product, Jungle Bird product. And so I started doing some shows at Barnes & Noble.
And what's really cool is that then this morphed into an app design, correct?
Yeah. Another amazing project. My son and I talked about this for quite a bit before it actually happened. And you can see it. All right. The Adventures of Jungle Birdy. We had talked about it a lot. And then I was like, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could actually get these on the mobile phones? So one of our friends, Mike Goyette, was a longtime friend and was a software genius, really. I mean, he walked us through the whole software and app development part of it. And then my son and I kept putting the pages together.
Jem, what I think is coolest here is the fact that the app that you've designed for kids, but it really kind of gets them involved with both the visual imagery and the music. And you're really not losing touch with either of those artistic aspects of your life. Yeah,
I know. I'm blessed in the fact that I've been able to do my art and music. I'm still recording like crazy over here. And and it's for kids of all ages.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so Jem, with so much going on with the app and your music and the like, you're still not done yet. You're even working on a clothing line, correct?
Oh yeah, that's one of our first T-shirts. But Jungle Birdy clothing, and we've been waiting for the trademark to come through, and they finally gave us the okay. They're going to go ahead and push it through. So now we'll have the trademark actually for all the Jungle Birdy clothing. Let's see here. And they're made so nice. And the prints on them, the colors are perfect. I couldn't have been happy.
I was going to say it's every bit as vibrant as your artwork, both on the page and on the app as well. Those are really kind of cool looking. Okay, so Jem, all of this stuff going on, where can people find your app? Where can people find you if they want to learn more about the clothing line and just kind of catch up with everything that you're doing?
Yeah, I'll be announcing the clothing line on my Facebook page coming up. We're probably 3 or 4 weeks away for the final paperwork and everything to get settled. So let's see. And then the app, The Adventures of Jungle Birdy, it's on the Apple Store and on Google Play. So it's available. It's out there. It's free right now too. So enjoy. All right.
Jem Targal, an artist of many, many facets. Thank you so much for being with us today on the Record Show. We wish you all the best of luck with both the app and the clothing line. And you keep on making that music and keep it rolling and rocking for us, please.
Oh, Jim. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on here. Just like I said, it's nice to be noticed and thought of. So, and with the record people too, I love it. So, thanks, Jim.
As always, man, your music is going to live on regardless, and we really, really appreciate you making some great stuff for all of us to enjoy, sir.
All right, cool. Okay,
Take
thanks,
care.
Jim. Bye.
I'd like to thank Jem Targal once again for joining us today on The Record Show. And down in the description, we'll be sure to put a link to his Adventures of Jungle Birdy App for those of you that would like to check that out a little bit further and have some fun. On the subject of Michigan rock and roll, when you think of good albums from artists in Michigan, of course, you're going to go immediately to the likes of Bob Seger and or Ted Nugent. But if you dig a little bit deeper, chances are you're going to find some very fun and very, very collectible LPs in there as well. Not to say that some of the Seger stuff or Nugent stuff isn't collectible in its own right, but they were so popular that so many of them were produced that makes collecting them a little bit easier. One of the only early albums from Bob Seger to be reissued is the Bob Seger System, his first LP with that group after leaving Bob Seger and the Last Herd and Cameo Records. This has been reissued a couple of different times in a couple of different places, but not a lot of his earlier stuff has. So when I say that some of the Seger stuff isn't as collectible, that's not quite true. His more popular, more famous stuff is. You get to albums like Back in 72, for example, that has not been reissued. Mongrel has not been reissued. Brand New Morning has not as well. And some of those, including the Back in 72, tend to fetch a little bit higher dollar when it comes to the likes of Discogs Marketplace and or that place called eBay. Same thing goes with Nugent. A lot of his solo stuff is very, very common and can be found for a couple of bucks at great record stores just about everywhere. When you get back to his Amboy Dukes era, though, some of these do tend to get a little bit higher, not much, but a little bit higher in the collectability. Finding these in good condition is also a little tough. So their big hit, again, Journey to the Center of the Mind from the Amboy Dukes, or something like Tooth, Fang, and Claw, tend to be a little more collectible, but not in that super high dollar price range. But when you can find them, that is always fun to do so as well. But when you get to the groups like Jem Targal's Third Power, that's where you start to get into a little higher dollar and more rare records. We talked about the first pressing of this with Jem, and he also talked a little bit about what it's like to have such a high dollar price tag on these early pressings of his records.
Look, just when you just listen to the music, you understand.
And when you see and hear about vinyl collectors really trying to get their hands on these, I mean, how does that make you feel?
Oh, special. Thank you. Yeah, really. Especially after all even Lucky Guy. That was, 1978.
Now, as for Jem Targal's solo work, the aforementioned album that came out in 1978, if you're ever lucky enough to find Lucky Guy, see what I did there, that is a very high-end collectible, going usually in the triple-digit range, mid-400s to over $500 on Discogs. In fact, there are only 2 available for sale now on Discogs, starting at $550. Now, Jem also mentioned the Third Power's first 7-inch single. That was on Baron Records, Baron AR626, with the songs We, You, I, and the backside of Snow. Now that, as a 45, fetches a very handsome price on eBay, usually in the triple digit, 115 to 150-ish dollars on there. So that is another rare find. But back to their album, Believe, this could be anywhere from $50 to $100 depending upon condition. Now there are some bootleg versions of this album floating around out there, but there's also that Record Store Day issue from 2016 that Jem mentioned that has the bonus tracks and the compact disc with it that is a legitimate press and also a really cool and fun one to find. Now, some other Michigan groups that you might run across from that era, the late 1960s through the early to mid-1970s, also have some very high-end collectible value when it comes to their vinyl. Groups like the Rationals from Ann Arbor, if you find this, it's in the $50 to $150 range. I once found a copy of this, by the way, in a thrift store, autographed by all four members, and that was in the solid triple digit range. We got rid of it here at the store, and I kind of wished I'd kept that one, to tell you the truth, but this other first pressing is just as good. There have been subsequent reissues of the Rationals, as well as some bootlegs, I believe, of these as well. Other bands in the Michigan side to really keep an eye out for. It's tough to find albums by the Frigid Pink that are in good condition. You run across these once in a while, but these guys are from the Detroit area as well, famous mostly for their cover of House of the Rising Sun, but also a lot of other great sounding rock and roll of that Michigan rock and roll vein that we talk so much about here on the show. This album is not that difficult to find, but when you do, it's usually in the $20 to $30 range. A little bit higher on the collectability side for Frigid Pink, though, is their Defrosted. I've seen this go for upwards of $50 to $75, again, depending upon the condition. Now, another great artist from the mid-Michigan area is Dick Wagner, and this is when he was in the band The Frost. These can also fetch a little bit higher on the collectability, usually in the $20 to $30 range, maybe a little bit more. But like a lot of these other albums from the Michigan artists that we've talked about, it is very, very difficult to find these in good condition. When you do, you should snag them. But these were party albums, like so much of the other music around here. So they traveled from house to house and party to party, lots of folks handling them. So they tend to be, as we say here, well loved. Now, one of Dick Wagner's other projects that I've only run across once is a band called Ursa Major. This also, some great rock and roll. If you can find it, it does fetch usually in the $30 to $50 range, again, depending upon condition. So another great, rare Michigan act. So just how cool was Michigan rock and roll from that great era from the late 60s through early 70s? So cool that they got their own compilation album called Michigan Rocks. You'll run across these from time to time, but this is a fantastic find if you ever do find one. The likes of MC5, The Stooges, Bob Seger System. There's a couple of different versions of this that has to do with the system. We'll talk about that on a later record show. But you also get the likes of Detroit with Mitch Ryder, The Frost on here, Ted Nugent and the Amboy Dukes, Third Power, SRC, and the Rationals. So a fitting tribute to a great state with some great rock and roll roots. Time once again on the record show to go to our friend Ken Norton from Ingram Entertainment. And as spring marches forward into April now, of course, we are seeing a lot more new releases coming a lot quicker. Ken, and is that the case? Or am I just imagining things that we're really kind of getting hot and heavy now?
No, you're absolutely right. That's really what happens most years, and it seems especially true this year.
So this Friday, we've got a nice batch as well hitting the shelves at an indie record store near you, correct?
Oh, yeah, we really do. The one that's possibly most anticipated is the second installment of the Sturgill Simpson Cutting Grass series, where he's interpreting his own material with a top flight, worldwide recognized bluegrass band that he's put together, using basically the same musicians he did on Volume 1, which was a huge hit. And the comes out this Friday. The indie stores get a exclusive blue colored vinyl, which the Wasteland will have, and that's that's the biggest release of the week. There's some fine reissues. The Eagles, all three of their, I think it's all three of their live albums. Not counting the DVDs. I think these are the only ones that were released as albums. Long Road Out of Eden, that's from 2007. The Millennium Concert from 1999 is coming out. And then Eagles Live from 1980 is also coming. So in addition to that, a Porcupine Tree record from 1993 is being reissued by a label that's picking up all their previously unavailable LPs one at a time this year. You've got the Bangles, their last studio album from 2011. It's called Sweethearts of the Sun. That's on limited edition teal vinyl.
Cool.
Good record for pop fans, produced by Matthew Sweet. And Grand Funk Railroad, live Grand Funk Railroad on translucent red vinyl.
That would be cool.
Pretty nice piece. And I understand that you're going to have a conversation with the one and only Mr. Mark Farner before long.
Yes, we will. We're going to be recording that here in the next week or so for a later episode of the record show, and I'm very much looking forward to that. And they're tying into not only the reissue of that, the Grand Funk Live, but Mark Farner's got a DVD coming soon that we're going to get details on, hopefully.
He does. Pretty great project. And Mr. Farner still has it, so and he brings it. So you'll enjoy talking to him, I'm sure. And
all right. Well, thanks again, Ken, and we will talk to you again next week as things continue to zip forward with this.
Great, Jim. Looking forward to it.
Hey everybody, it's Heather again from the Wasteland, and once again, Jim has given me a covers record to talk to you guys about. I'm super excited about this one too. This is Chris Cornell, the late great Chris Cornell from Audioslave, Soundgarden, and I think most people have heard Patience probably already, and maybe some of the other stuff. He actually recorded this record in 2016 with Brendan O'Brien, who probably is the producer who has defined a lot of my generation anyway. So I was pretty excited to see that they worked together. Chris ended up being he was the only musician on the record besides Brendan, which Brendan's of course pretty familiar with doing. He's a pretty prolific musician unto himself. It's a great track listing. I'm not going to lie. I bought it because of Patience and the Prince song, And Nothing Compares to You, which I don't care who covers it. It's one of the greatest songs ever. I think it's just beautiful. And Chris does a fabulous job of it. He does a beautiful job on Patience, too. I don't know. It might even be better than Guns N' Roses. I love it. So anyway, that's what I bought it for. But in honesty, why do we get cover records? We buy these albums because we get them from artists that we really like, because we kind of want to see what inspired them and what was their deep dive, what got them, whether it was got them into music or what made them really just want to write on this record. And I did a really good deep dive on this one. Chris really went soulful on this, and I love it. There is, You Don't Know Nothing About Love. Wow. That's amazing. The original I think is really, really cool. It's a Carl Hall recorded it, but it's a Jerry, I can't remember his last name, Ragovi. I don't know if that's how we say it. He was the Hit Factory guy, and he worked with a ton of people. He recorded this song with Carl Hall, and there's actually a cool story behind it where Frank Sinatra bailed on a recording session, and Jerry kind of scrambled and he already had these musicians, like these symphonic musicians and all these people, and he got Carl Hall to come in, and it ended up being like one of the biggest selling singles on this little singles label that was on Warner. But it's a really great cover, and Chris does a great job. Another really soulful song that he does, sorry, I'm looking at my tracks, is Stay With Me, Baby. It's the last track on the album. It's just incredible. Just like, a lot of people have covered this song. I think we've even seen it on The Voice or American Idol or something like that. But Lorraine Ellison, the original, or I think was the first one who recorded it. Her version is beautiful. It's almost like she's going to cry. It's got all this crazy symphonic sound behind it, like almost Phil Spector-y. And Chris does almost the same kind of thing. And it's a really faithful rendition. And there's something about it being the last track on the record that is just extra soulful, It's just Stay With Me, Baby, So it's just really nice. He really goes to his heart, I think, a lot on some of these tracks. To Be Treated Right, Terry Reid, his original is kind of AAA, in my opinion. I think Chris kind of cowboys it up a little, puts a little country spin on it that's really kind of nice. He covers Showdown by ELO. I'm not a huge ELO fan, so I am just going to say that I love this version that Chris did. But there's a lot of you fans out there that I think you're going to like it one way or the other. It's a little different. Watching the Wheels by John Lennon and Yoko Ono. They wrote the song. When was that? I don't know. I guess right before he died, but it was released after John died, if I'm remembering correctly. And I loved it when I was a little kid. I thought it was just a great song. I think Chris's version is a little haunting, as one of my friends pointed out. There's something about he does a pretty faithful version of it, and there's just something about it that kind of rings true, like almost like he could have written the song himself. I'm sure it really spoke to him. So it's kind of nice to hear him sing it. Sad Sad City was, I'm going to admit here, the cover is by a band called Ghostland Observatory. I had no idea. I'd never heard of them before. I checked them out. They're a pretty cool duo, kind of techno, dancey duo. They were a little bit after my DJ kind of knowing stuff, maybe 2004 to 2014 or so. They were pretty cool. And Chris's version is kind of faithful to theirs too, even though they're really techno and dancey. He goes really heavy. He does like a kind of a heavier industrial beat with it, but he keeps it pretty faithful. It's kind of a cool song, and it made me go check out a new band, and I love that. Okay, last two tracks that I want to talk about are my two favorites on the record. Get It While You Can. I don't think it was written by Janis Joplin, but I think we know it and love it by Janis Joplin. And it made me go back and look at like old concert footage of her playing it and stuff. It was awesome. And I think Chris does such a cool version of it. It's such a beautiful song. It's kind of a love song. It's cool. So that's really good. That's the jump off track, and it's awesome. But my favorite track overall in the whole thing is his cover of Harry Nilsson's Jump Into the Fire. If you don't think you know this song, there's a very good chance you know this song. If you've ever seen the movie Goodfellas, you definitely know this song. I love soundtrack music. It's the track that's playing when Henry's just at his cocaine climax, and he's seeing the helicopters everywhere, and he's going out of his head and doesn't know what to do. Remember that crazy thrumming track that's playing? That's that track. And you probably know it. Chris does a great version. I think it's just phenomenal. So it's a fun record. If you want the obvious ones, like I said, that Prince song, you can't go wrong with that. The record's worth that alone. But really, everything else on it is really good. So Chris Cornell, no one sings like you anymore. There's a little truth to that. We miss you, buddy. It's just total evidence that there was so much more to come. Volume 1 tells us that there is more to come. My understanding is that this is what he actually finished, mixed, did with Brendan, and that there's other stuff in the can that Brendan O'Brien is working on, or they're working on and trying to figure out getting out to us. So I'm pretty excited about that. Soundgarden geeks probably already know this, but the title of the album comes from a Soundgarden song, Black Hole Sun. Heaven send, hell away, no one sings like you anymore. So that's a nice little thing for you guys. You can get black vinyl at your indie record stores. I know everyone has them, and you can get a picture disc on the Chris Cornell website. So check that out if that's your thing too. All right, thanks very much. Pick it up. You must have. See you next time.
Right round, baby, right round, like a record, baby, round, 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 round. You spin me right round, baby, right round, like a record, baby, round, 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 round.
Thanks for watching The Record Show. If you haven't done so yet, please make sure to subscribe to the Radio Wasteland Records YouTube channel. And be sure to hit that notifications bell so you'll be alerted every time we upload new content.